This seems to work. So, good morning, everyone, and it's always so wonderful to be at GLF. We have a wonderful panel today, so we'll go straight into questions. So, first question, this session's called the Philanthropy Paradox. So, let's start with purpose. What's philanthropy for? Is it for doing good? Is it for feeling good that you're doing something good? Is it for social change? What's it for? So let me start with you, Esther. And what's philanthropy for? In your view, what would you like to see it do? What do you see it doing?
Thank you so much. Great to be here. Philanthropy, I think, means love human beings. Love. So I think philanthropy is for doing good. That's what it says in the right on the tin. But I think the right way to think about it is that it's not meant to substitute other sources of funds like government funds or company funds, but it's meant to catalyze them and leverage them. So you want to think about philanthropy as a form of investment in the capacity generation, knowledge generation that is going to be used by many other people around the world. So in Jaipur, which the organization I co-founded a little over 20 years ago, that's very much how we think about it. We think about philanthropy dollar as venture capital in a way for the social sector. There is no venture capital in the social sector per se because there is not too much money to be made. But the social gain can be fantastic if the investment is made in innovation, in social innovation, and in evaluation of what works, what doesn't work, etc. And let me take the opportunity to say that I think it's an absolutely fantastic window of opportunity for Indian philanthropy to take the leadership in this particular movement. Because we are in a moment where international organizations are retreating, where, of course, bilateral funding of aid is retreating, and that has been playing a little bit of a part in this venture capital role and innovation financing. And that, of course, is in itself a tragedy, but it's also a window of opportunity for organizations in the global south to kind of emerge solutions for funders and philanthropic funders in the global south to finance this solution and in the research in these solutions, so that they emerge from everywhere in the world, and the leadership of social innovation can be much more distributed globally. And I think it's a unique time for Indian philanthropists, for all the money that is being developing all over the country in companies, among high net worth individuals, to say, okay, we are going to be in the driving seat now of emerging this new innovation and thereby catalyzing the entire social sector in India, but also worldwide. Because innovations that are developed in one place, once you know that they work, can actually be spread in the world. I'll give you one example, which is an India example, which is the Pratham's programming, teaching at the right level, that really is kind of a quite powerful way to improve the quality of education. It was started in Bombay with some UNICEF funding at the very beginning in the 90s. Through iterative research, it developed a model that is not only very effective, but highly scalable. It's been now taken up by many Indian states with government money, which means that the original efforts are like multiplied many folds, and it is spreading all over the world. In Africa, but also in places like in France, for example, where teaching at the right level is all the rage. So this is a story that we need to replicate, multiply, and that there is no reason for India not to be fully self-sufficient in generating those successes, that there is no need for external funding for the next Pratham, and for the evaluation of the programs of the next Pratham, it can be done internally. So that's a call for anybody here, who is in that sector, that this is your time to be like really in the front seat in a way that is transformational, I think, for India and for the world.
So Esther, since you sort of pointed at Siddharth, I'll come to Siddharth next. Um, Siddharth, you're the CEO of the Tata Trusts. The Tata Trusts is India's largest philanthropic organization in terms of annual funding. I think between the trusts and the CSR of Tata companies, there is spending of between 5 and 7,000 crores a year, which is about somewhere between 10 and 15% of total philanthropic funding in India, I believe. I think those are the numbers, but if you have better numbers, you could correct me, please. What's philanthropy for to you? Because this is a question you worry about every morning when you wake up.
Thanks, Naushad. I'm delighted to be here with this audience. I think you're right that between the Tata Trusts and the Tata group of companies, the listed companies that are there, I hope you can hear me. Hello? Yeah. Is that okay? So between the Tata Trusts and the Tata group of companies, you're right, the annual spends would be about 4,000 crores plus, which would be about 10 to 15% of the entire philanthropic capital in India. And for us, you see, it's about an ethos. Philanthropy, the Tatas were incubated out of philanthropy. The business has its origin in philanthropy and not the other way around. It's a very unique structure because all of you, I mean, the Tata group touches Indians, and it's also, of course, a very international group in various facets of life. So you know about Tata Steel, you know about TCS, you know about companies. But I'll just take a minute to introduce you to the fascinating organizational structure. See, there is a group of trusts, philanthropic entities. Now, please remember that the Tata family does not own the Tata Trusts. The Tata Trusts are a group of 14 philanthropic trusts, which are public charitable trusts, which means they are held in perpetuity in trust for the people of India, for the millions of Indians. These have a majority shareholding in Tata Sons, which is the holding company. And then from there, Tata Sons has promoted the Tata Group companies, which is TCS, IHCL, Tata Steel. So the profits from these companies go back in the form of dividends to Tata Sons, which goes back in the form of dividend income to Tata Trust, and which is then employed in philanthropic activities for the benefit of the people of India. This is such a unique organizational model that you will not see it anywhere. The more our businesses do better, the more we contribute to the overall socio-economic development of India. And therefore, as JRD had famously said, what has come from the people of India has gone back to them many times over. And that continues. So I think for me, philanthropy is about systemic change. You are in it for the long term. You have to know what it takes to drive change, and everything that you can do in terms of convergence, in terms of collaboration. I mean, Esther talked about one example. I'll talk about cancer. Now, cancer is one of the biggest public concerns, public health concerns in India. Now, the Tata Trust set up the Assam Cancer Care Foundation, which is we invested in 17 hospitals in the state of Assam. And you'd ask me, why Assam? Because its cancer incidence is much higher than the national average. And so we set up a distributed cancer care model with an investment of about 2,000 crores in the state, where the idea was, Mr. Ratan Tata's idea was that every resident of Assam would be able to access quality cancer care facilities within 150 kilometers of where they were based. And the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Health said that this is a brilliant model. It should be replicated by state governments. And so now government of Maharashtra has started to do this. So philanthropy is also about proof of concept, about doing things which nobody will do, making sure that hopefully with the collaboration of multiple partners and the state, they will scale up and they will be replicated across the country. So for me, really, it's about an ethos. It's about the way you live and the way you work and the way you are able to help the underserved and those who are at the margins of Indian society.
Thanks, Siddharth. Let me come to you. What's philanthropy to you? And then after Vaibhav, I'm going to list a set of terms that you've all covered.
Sure. Thank you. What a pleasure to be here this morning. Every year.
Hold it close.
Closer. Can you hear me now? Wonderful. Thank you. Oh my God. Thank you, Sanjoy.
My father used to say, imagine you're a singer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. So thank you very much, and thank you, Sanjoy, for having me here every year. I really enjoy being in Jaipur and in JLF. Philanthropy to me is something that starts with passion. Without that, you can't start giving away your own hard-earned money. It starts with passion, and then it leads to change of heart for the people who you are serving. I think it's a huge statement of values for anyone who works in this space. Um, People who believe in humanity, people who believe in positive change, people who believe in supplementing the public funding, because philanthropy can never be the main source of funding. In India, about 95% of social sector funding is coming from the government. It's just the 5 to 10% funding that comes, and mostly, as we already know, is from companies or the groups like Tata's. And there are two different things, Naushad, that I wanted to talk about. One is definitely, sometimes it starts with welfare approach, that there is a cause and you want to serve that cause. And probably many of those started with in the charitable mode, but actually groups like Tata's then started building it into empowerment tool, and which is what is required in the country today. What Esther was talking about, India is in a very unprecedented space in terms of private wealth at this point in time, and I think it is high time that we start channelizing these funds for the welfare of people who are still marginalized, who are still not being reached. And I think philanthropy does that work very, very well. And because I work with women, I would like to highlight how women needs to be part of that planning, designing, and also spending circle. Thank you. I'll stop here, but I'll come again.
Thank you, Kanta. So, Vaibhav, what's philanthropy to you? What's it for?
What's that? Yeah. Thank you for having me here. And I think most of my co-panelists have already covered what philanthropy is. Let me take a little consulting approach to it. If I paint a picture of the lay of the land, the social change in India happens at the intersection of government, markets, and civil society. Civil society, NGOs are closest to the problem, the context, lived reality, but they have little money or power to make a big scaled change and impact. Government, if you have to impact millions, it's the government that can take a social change to millions. It can actually create a change at scale. But the government is limited by spending public money judiciously. They have political considerations to also make. Then comes the markets. So markets you can qualify as industry, tech entrepreneurs, CSR, multilaterals, foundations, philanthropy. A lot of, and I'm not trying to divide markets by intent, I'm trying to divide markets by operating structure. A lot of these market players work on incentives. The incentives could be money for entrepreneurs, for industry. They want to make money before, let's say, a change is integrated. A lot of CSRs, multilaterals have to have solidified proof of concept before they can invest in that. Philanthropy, on the other hand, can invest in discovery and not just solutions. I think so that's the point that I think we all were trying to make. How do you figure out what are the white spaces that exist in the system where the government money or the CSR money or the multilateral money has not reached yet? how do you identify what areas, what social priorities are well-funded? Health, education, livelihoods are well-funded. What are underfunded? Gender equity is underfunded. Climate movement is underfunded. Disability is probably underfunded. So what are the areas that you can find which need more funding? What are the white spaces in the existing well-funded priorities? Like health, for example, cure is well-funded, prevention might not be that well-funded. In livelihoods, skill development is well-funded, but migration, childcare might be underfunded. So that's another role of philanthropy. And the third role of philanthropy would be to develop systems architecture, infrastructure. People invest in solutions, but who is investing in people? Who is investing in data architecture? Who is investing in research? Who is investing in convening so that people can share knowledge? That's another role of philanthropy. So I think these are the roles of philanthropy in my eyes.
Thank you, Vaibhav. Thanks. So we have a set of terms that have come up. There's long-term systemic change. There's the concept that philanthropy isn't a substitute for government action, but it's a way of proving concepts, of then scaling those concepts, of identifying gaps in what isn't funded and therefore starting to address some of those gaps. Moving on from government and its role, the role of NGOs being close to society and therefore having a deeper understanding of what needs actually are. And then terms like investment, knowledge investment in people, knowledge creation so that we know what is the right thing to do, and social innovation and experimentation. And I think, Kanta, you made the point that the government, or I think Vaibhav, you said that the government, it's government money, it's public money. If it's public money, you can't experiment that much. You kind of need to demonstrate that it's done what it was supposed to do. So experimentation is something, again, that philanthropy can really fund very effectively. So let's start with with some of these. Let's talk about philanthropy as a way of scaling impact. Because I think your point that, look, 95% of social spending in India will come from the government. So we're talking about the 5%. So how does the 5% play a role in helping direct where the 95% will be most effective, and without in any way trying to substitute it? What I'll do with these questions and themes is I'll just come to one person, but I've encouraged all panelists to jump in and add after the one person if they'd like to. So Esther, let me start with you.
Yeah, thank you. So that's I already gave you an example with
teaching at the right level.
Teaching at the right level. Let me give you another example, which is particularly close to my heart because it's very recent. I just had the privilege of meeting with the MORD, the Ministry of Rural Development, yesterday, because we are a knowledge partner with them, and in fact, Nudge is involved in this project as well as an implementation partner of scaling up what's called the graduation approach for living extreme poverty. And that's an exact example of how small amounts of philanthropic money can be leveraged many folds, and the advantage is I have the numbers here. So the graduation approach is for the poorest people in a village, identified by their co-villagers, people who are completely out of the system. So they are so poor that in general, they can't even avail of the public scheme because they are not empowered to access them. So there is this organization in Bangladesh, BRAC, that developed this program to kind of get them into the system via the transfer of an asset, a lot of hand-holding, etc. This is expensive per person, but they demonstrated first in Bangladesh and then through a lot of philanthropic and multilateral funding in other countries that it can be durable. It has a durable impact on people living extreme poverty. So this is really, for a country like India, like potentially a tool for eliminating extreme poverty. Now, there was an evaluation done of this program in West Bengal. We are at 17 years, And the people there still are much better off than the control group. We did that in the context of a randomized experiment, so we can say it very rigorously. First, the state of Bihar, and now the central government is adopting the scheme as something that they want to do as part of their own social program. There is $300,000, sorry, I'm speaking in dollars, $300,000 of philanthropic capital invested in this to help with capacity building, research, etc. That's $300,000. The government has already committed $30 million. So that is the leverage that we are talking about. These 100 times is government money. Now you multiply it by the internal rate of return of this project, which are phenomenal, because with the effect that we have, literally within 2 years, the program pays for itself in terms of consumption increase, social increase, food security, women empowerment, health effect, mental health effect, etc., etc. So this is what I mean when I talk leverage. And I'm sorry to bring this back to Jaipur, but in 20 years, through the scale-up of the projects that we have found to be effective, Jaipur, which is a tiny organization, like compared to the World Bank or whatever, has reached 850 million lives. And we are aiming for 1 billion lives very soon. This, of course, we couldn't do alone. This is like with the help of philanthropic capital. What I want, really want, is Indian philanthropy, which has the financial might to do this, to join this journey in an enthusiastic way. Because I think this is the type of return on investment that you can look at.
Thank you, Esther. I'm going to come to a term, Kanta, that you used and connected to what Esther just said. You used the term passion. And one of the things that comes across when you meet almost any NGO is passion. You come across terrific domain knowledge. You come across great passion. You come across a real deep-seated desire to make a difference and do good. Yeah? That passion needs to get combined with something else. It needs to get combined with the ability to scale, the ability to experiment, to try out things, to fail. That's what experimentation involves. I mean, I would think that, of all the randomized control trials that JPAL must have run, there would be probably a fair number that showed that a particular intervention doesn't work. Maybe as many as the ones that show more.
But that's part of the journey.
That's part of the experimentation of being able to innovate socially and then identify what works. So it's actually a question for you, Kanta, and a question for Siddharth, which is that this passion, what does it take to convert this passion into a successful model that can then be scaled? And for Siddharth then, how, as the country's leading philanthropic organization, does one help that experimentation and scaling?
Thank you. And let me just bring some examples of women philanthropists who have come together now. In India, it's relatively new phenomena where women have started coming together and saying, hey, there's one area which is underfunded, which not many organizations are investing in, for example, violence against women. And yesterday I was talking to Siddharth and he was sharing how Tata Trust is interested, but globally I see violence against women and all types of violence is increasing and there's underfunding there. Within the health sector, you won't find much funds for women for addressing this. Even government has invested a lot of money. Now, if you show a successful example of prevention, I'm not saying addresser, if you show a perfect example of how you prevent violence against women by investing in men, which Rohini is doing, for example, is a perfect example. Now, government should take a cue and say, okay, we will increase public funding for prevention work. My team that works with the government on gender responsive budgeting, for last 20 years, we have been able to influence and also work closely with the government to take the general budget from 2% to 8.6% in last year's budget. And we are hoping this year it will be much better for gender responsive budgeting. That means specific funding for women related programs. In states, it's much higher. And with the Ladli Lakshmi and all these schemes, now it is 30%, 40%, and I'm not saying that those are very well thought out schemes, those are cash transfers, but any money in the hands of women is good money. That's what I consider, because it will not go waste. Women will invest it back into the society, in their families and their children, and removing poverty. So there are some perfect examples of how women have come forward to invest, how thoughtful organizations like Tata Trusts and many others have also been investing in removing some of the structural barriers that also impact women's lives, mostly in terms of their productive lives. So India is full of such great examples, and civil society organizations have a role to take them forward, provided they are invested in terms of their capacity and in terms of funding. Thank you.
So, Siddharth, did Kanta speak for you? Would you like to speak first?
No, I think, as India's largest philanthropic organization, I think there is a structural constraint that I see in this sector. The scale of the problems, the socio-economic problems in India is huge, and all of us know it. And of course, the primary responsibility is always that of the sovereign, which is the government of India and the state governments. Now, I think as Vaibhav mentioned, of course, there is a rigidity to government spending and government programs because there are a lot of authorities that have oversight on you. Now, when you complement as a philanthropy or as a business in terms of CSR, etc., what is it that you're looking at? You're looking at the philanthropists and private sector bringing in technology and innovation and bringing a fluidity and knowledge to the structure, which unfortunately government, as I said, is quite rigid on. The structural constraint is that while you have a lot of demand for funds, and there is a fair amount of supply also with philanthropists, CSR organizations, which is business, with ultra high net worth individuals now coming in and their family offices. The problem is that how do you ensure that you get implementational capacity on the ground, which means you do not really have high quality NGOs and civil society organizations who will make the most effective use of the funds that you deploy to result in greater impact on the ground. And therefore, as a sectoral leader, I think the Tata Trust, we've always stressed that we need to build capacity of the system, because unless you don't have top quality NGOs and civil society organizations, you will not be able to channelize funds to the ground. And that's where you want maximum impact. So I think that's the biggest structural constraint that I see. And if we are able to develop capacity over time, that there are a lot of organizations. We have incubated some of our own organizations, and we've given them the heft, both financial and human resources, to work in particular geographies and particular themes. Then there are organizations which are actually, Pradhan does it, the Grow Fund does it, who are kind of looking at various NGOs and then collecting money, collecting funds to ensure that you build capacity. But everybody who is heavily invested in this sector and the thought process needs to ensure that you have a very vibrant NGO and civil society organization structure if you really are serious about making impact on the ground.
Thanks for that. So I'll go straight to a last question, which is, the session is called the Philanthropy Paradox. So one of the things that we did yesterday evening was to talk about what paradox. And so I'll start with Vaibhav, and then we'll go around, and then we'll open it up to questions from the floor. So
I think the sector is already doing newer and newer things. What it needs is evolution and not a revolution. So there are a few paradoxes, but I'm sure that they're sort of moving forward. One of the powers of philanthropic capital, and I'll separate the actor from the device, is not just money. I think it's permission. It's permission for the communities to define problems on their own context. It's permission for practitioners to learn, experiment, figure out a solution. It's permission for the systems to sort of get built. It's permission for problems not to be diverted to fixed themes at the very beginning. As we try and do that, all of that, a paradox emerges. So if philanthropic capital, that is a capital to provide the permission for discovery of a problem and not focus on solution and focus on outcomes and not outputs in the short run. If it does that job that a CSR or government money should be doing, then a paradox emerges. Is it patient enough? If it's not patient enough, a paradox emerges. Is it investing in the system architecture? Is it investing in learning, research, for people, from what Siddharth pointed out, is it investing in the leadership of the civil society for them to operate at integration of people, processes, systems, policies, so that they grow and can absorb a large fund? If it doesn't do that initially, there's a paradox that emerges. So I think that's the paradox.
Thanks, Vaibhav. So let me go to Kanta next. So is there a paradox?
There is. There is definitely. One is, and I'll start with evidence, what Esther and her organization are doing. There's enough evidence that women have been left behind now 80 years after the freedom. And why I'm talking about women is that's my passion. And that's what I work for. 80%, 80 years of freedom, having one of the most progressive documents as a constitution, women are still left behind. We have enough evidence as to which are the areas which are underfunded. We are still not putting women at the center of that. That's number one paradox. There's, as I said, there's unprecedented wealth in the world, particularly in private hands, yet that's not being designed very well to reach out to the most marginalized people. It is still getting invested into overfunded programs. And the third paradox is that when women can design these things better, men are still deciding on where the money should go. 70% of the women's NGOs are being headed by men. It's so unfortunate. And they are deciding what women need. We are not putting women where they should be. These are the paradoxes, and I think the last one would be that we need to start looking at young people building their leadership, and also what Siddharth was talking about. When we know there is a huge capacity gap in the civil society sector, we need to give unrestricted grants for capacity building so that they start delivering better, they start managing bigger programs, they can deliver more money, but with greater impact. So those are some of the paradoxes. Thank you.
Thanks, Kanta. You know, CSR is the CSR mandate, you know, for those who aren't familiar. CSR, there was a mandate that came in 2014 that all Indian companies that make more than a certain threshold of profits each year need to invest 2% of their profit before tax in CSR on an annual basis. And there's a set of things, I think 7 items or items that you can fund, including education and health and so on. It's a very powerful program, but it does focus, and to some extent it limits the capacity building funding that Kanta, you were talking about, because it's difficult. It's easier to fund programs than it is to fund capacity building or to fund general institutional support. So that, you know, is there a paradox first? And if you can also mention something about that, you know, how the trusts play that role, because the trusts are less restricted in what they can fund.
So I think, I mean, I'm speaking from the vantage viewpoint of the trusts, and they come in with more than 130 years of philanthropy behind them. I think what Vaibhav talked about, what Kanta talked about, I don't see them as paradoxes. I see them as constraints. I wouldn't even call them structural. I think it's a mindset issue, and the Tata Trusts address all of this. I think we would say that women definitely have to be at the center of, and I'll give you an example. I do travel a lot to our field sites across the country. And I recently was 200 kilometers from Udaipur in the interiors of Rajasthan. And we had incubated farmer-producer organizations where women were on the board of directors and were leading it. And you would be amazed to see the kind of enthusiasm and the kind of passion that was spoken about, because they started with hardly anything and they were telling me, each one of them, 20 of them, telling me that, sir, the turnover for this FPO is 10 crores. And when will you come to see us next? So I said, I will come if you promise to raise it to 20 crores. And they said, next year we will do it. And you know, the point is not about financial empowerment. The point is what it does to them in the community, how it builds up their agency, and how it makes them feel valued. So I think women absolutely have to be front and center of everything that we do. I think the marginalized communities, I can give an example again. USAID, as you know, shut down its operations last year. And there was some beautiful work that they were doing on transgenders, etc., which was sub-run clinics that had been set up for their sexual health, for their mental health, etc. And they got shut out. And at the Trust, when we read that news items, we told our teams that please connect with them. We will restart it all over again with Trust funding, and we did that. So the question is that we address all the constraints that they have talked about. I don't think there's a paradox. With CSR, I see a little issue. Of course, it was businesses to invest in socially responsible activities and tasks, but it's, to my mind, and this is my personal opinion, it's become a ticking of the check boxes. You know, it's again it's program-oriented, it's project-oriented, and it is not that long-term view of change, systemic change. It is not about investment of patient capital, risk capital. It is, again, just slotting it into buckets and saying, yes, I did this over a 3-year timeline, and I met the compliance requirements that were mandated on me. So I think that's where the issue is, but I think there's enough place under the sun for everybody in India and the world over. The requirement is for collaboration, for convergence, for not only financial sharing of resources, but sharing of knowledge and best practices. Everybody here works in silos. Why are the leaders not coming together? And why are they not just kind of doing away with that and saying, okay, this is the problem. All of us have to pool our resources and our mental capabilities and our technological capabilities and address the issues that India faces. I think that's really what is the crux, and that's really what is required today.
Thanks, Siddharth. So I'm going to go straight to the audience with for questions. I mean, if Sanjay wants to ask a question, there's no choice.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to set the context. One, thank Esther and Abhijit Banerjee for suggesting that we do this. But I see the paradox really as the lack of trust between government, corporates, and the NGO sector. What do we need to build this? You talked about, Siddharth, that we should step up leadership, we should collaborate more, be it Nudge Foundation or Catalyst Now, which I co-chair, or Tata Trusts. We are seeing the NGO sector, not just in India, but across the world, being beaten up much more. What do we need to do? Do we need a CII or a FICCI equivalent to lobby, to create policies, to share good practices? How do we break this? We know that the NGO sector does, like she said, 850 million people, 1 billion people. We are seeing the difference. Ourselves at Salam Bala Trust with 3 kids, but we are seeing the trust deficit hugely with government and corporates. How do we break that?
So I think it's really, if you ask me, and again, I'm speaking from a vantage point of view, I think the Tata Trusts and the Government of India and the state governments have been collaborators over the longest period of time. We see absolutely no trust issues, no trust deficit. We've signed with the Government of Maharashtra MOUs, 7 MOUs. We're in the process of signing, should be done any day. We've signed with the Government of Uttarakhand. We've signed with the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. I think the problem arises when you start seeing each other as, opposed to the central task at hand. I think there is a lot of synergy between government and the civil society sector, provided we focus on work and not on activism. I think the issue arises when activism takes center stage. It is good to a certain extent, But I think I always say, cut out the noise and focus on the job at hand. And if every NGO kind of started doing that and not kind of having, whether it's the funders or anyone else, not having any agenda other than development, I think the so-called trust deficit that you allude to, Sanjoy, I have not seen that trust deficit insofar as the yes, but no, but then again,
It's trust in your name.
It was built over 150 years. Now, if we start working together, I don't think that trust issue will be such a major issue.
Sanjoy has a point. I mean, that's one of the reasons why CSR is as prescriptive as it is. So, I want to go there.
Yeah, I want to go back to passion, and I think that there is passion everywhere. Actually, I work a lot with government people across the board, from the very local level, at the panchayat level, to the highest level, at the minister level, at the secretary level. There is a lot of passion. There actually are many, many people in the system, in governments, in companies, in NGOs who are passionate. So the issue is to be able to leverage this passion towards activities and objectives that are effective, that makes a real difference in the life of the people on the ground, which is actually, in this my strong belief and experience, a shared ambition of many of the people in the system. And to me, the paradox, go back to paradox not as a problem, but as like a puzzle. The paradox is, with tiny amount of money that exists in the philanthropic sector worldwide compared to the amount of money that exists in governments, the outside influence that this can have through the leveraging of these passions in government and outside government towards effective social action. So what I am going back in a sense to what I started with is that my plea, my call for action is to kind of embrace this paradox and go, like push on it, because there is so much that can be done by creating the knowledge, co-creating the knowledge that will ensure that this passion is channelized towards effective social action. And I think that will go a long way towards the trust issues as well, because there is a sense of driving, the boat in the same direction.
Thank you, Esther. So, not only are we out of time, but the signage on the side is that we're out of time, and the signage is this. So we will end the session here. But I just wanted to thank our wonderful panelists, Esther, Kanta, Siddharth, and